Welcome to Refuting Rationality, the show where we refute the YouTube atheist Rationality Rules. In today's episode, Mr. Rationality is apparently gonna try and debunk the argument from Ignorance Fallacy. Now that seems very weird for him to do, since not only is argument from Ignorance a fallacy, it's a fallacy he himself accused Christians of doing. So essentially he'd be debunking his own argument. But no. As you'll see, he's actually trying to treat the argument from Ignorance Fallacy as an actual argument, like Kalam's argument, which of course goes against what he said in a previous video when he accused Christians of the argument from Ignorance Fallacy. And so without further ado, let's get into it.
Human nature to want answers, and just like us alive today, our ancestors wanted the same. They wanted to know where the rain came from, what an earthquake is, how life started, how the earth was formed, and what the bright lights in the night sky really are. And they knew. If we take earthquakes alone, medieval Christians knew that they were punishments sent by God. Ancient Greeks knew that they are caused each time Atlas lost a war against Zeus. And the ancient Japanese knew that they are caused by the sudden movement of the giant catfish.
No, they didn't. None of them knew any of that. Knowledge is defined as true, justified belief. So if you're saying they knew all these contradicting ideas, then you're saying that all those contradicting ideas are true. I wouldn't even say medieval Christians knew that they were punishments from God. They knew God was responsible, but not that they were punishments, or what they were punishments for. If you know something, then it's true. If it's not true, then you didn't know it. You can claim to know something all you want, but unless it's a true, justified belief, then you don't actually know it.
To state it clearly, an argument from ignorance occurs when either a claim is asserted to be true because it hasn't yet been proven to be false, or when a claim is asserted to be false because it hasn't yet been proven to be true. For example, you can't prove that there isn't a mirror universe of our own. Therefore, there must be one out there somewhere. However, in a typical argument from ignorance for a god, the specific type that we're going to focus on for the rest of this video, a theist will propose a scenario that cannot, or currently cannot, be adequately explained by our current understanding, and they will then fill the gap with an assertion of their god. Hence, this argument is often referred to as the God of the Gaps argument. For example, we currently do not know how life started. Therefore, God created life.
That is what I would call an argument from ignorance. We do not currently know how X happened, therefore Y caused X. That's saying we don't know, but we know. That is literally an argument from ignorance. And I will say Christians do not make that argument. We say we know how X happened. God caused X. The atheist doesn't know how life started. But we do know how life started. God created life. It is not an argument from ignorance. We are not saying we don't know, therefore God. We are saying we know, therefore God.
When put this simply, it might sound like such a terrible argument that nobody in their right mind would use it. In fact, it may even sound like I'm strawmanning the argument. But in context, and when combined with other fallacies, especially the black and white fallacy, it's actually really quite difficult to notice. To give you a better representation of the previous example but when in context, here is the same argument but when presented in a typical conversation. Despite our scientific advancements and collective knowledge, we still haven't been able to prove that life can spontaneously pop out of thin air. And so therefore, assuming that there wasn't a divine intervention is close-minded. I mean, you don't know for sure that a god wasn't involved, and so acting as if one wasn't is disingenuous. You should try and keep an open mind. Do you see what I mean? Unless blindingly obvious, it's not all.
He is strawmanning us. No, we cannot prove life can spontaneously appear out of thin air, but we can prove that it can't. Nobody makes the argument that you can't prove life can't come from nothing. We make the argument that it's impossible. 0 plus 0 equals 0.
Starting with its most critical flaws. Arguably the most critical flaw in arguments from ignorance is that they attempt to shift the burden of proof. When two parties are in discourse and one asserts a claim that the other disputes, the party who is asserting the claim has the burden of proof to substantiate it. However, in an argument from ignorance, the asserting party insists that the other party must prove their claim false, and in doing this they attempt to shift the burden of proof. To go back to our life from non-life example, the theist attempts to shift the burden of proof by insisting that unless the other party can prove how life started, they are justified in maintaining a belief that their God divinely intervened.
Do you notice the disparity between what he's saying and what he's showing? What he's saying sounds accurate. An argument from ignorance shifts the burden. But what he's showing is a straw man of what he would claim to be a black and white fallacy. No Christian debater would say life either popped out of thin air or God created it. Some people might say that hyperbolically, but that wouldn't be the argument. Now, if you remove the hyperbolic statement of out of thin air and replace it with what the atheist actually believes about some sort of mythical natural process, then not only do you not have a bifurcation fallacy, but the burden of proof would be on the atheist to prove that it's the fallacy. And he would do that by offering a third option. Of course, a better way of phrasing it would be, if you don't believe either of those options, what do you believe? And if he tries to say, I don't have a belief, it's up to you to convince me, then he's actually the one shifting the burden, especially in a debate where he's taken the opposite side. He's taken it upon himself to prove his position. And if he doesn't actually have a position, then I think I would actually have to accuse him of making an argument from ignorance.
Well, an argument's not the same as contradiction.
Can be.
No, it can't. An argument's a connected series of statements to establish a definite proposition.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. It isn't just contradiction.
Look, if I argue with you, I must take up a contrary position.
But it isn't just saying no, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Another major recurring flaw with arguments from ignorance is that they often commit a black and white fallacy. A black and white fallacy occurs when a party presents two choices as the only possibilities, when in fact additional options cannot be ruled out. And in the case of our life from non-life example, the theist asserts that either life emerged spontaneously from nothing, or that their specific God created life, without justifying why these two options are the only possibilities. In doing this, they are once again attempting to shift the burden of proof. It is the theist that is making the claim that only two options exist, and so once again it is the theist that has the burden of proof to substantiate this claim. It is not up to the disputing party to disprove their assertions or provide additional options.
I kinda just went over this, but I'll go over it again. If you accuse someone of making a bifurcation fallacy, it's black and white fallacy, what he calls it, you are making a claim, and it is up to you to substantiate it. And claims of bifurcation fallacies are substantiated by offering a third option. So, ironically, he's actually the one trying to shift the burden. Asking me to justify why there are only two options for how life began is asking me to prove a negative. If I say there's only two options, I can't present you a third option that doesn't exist. That part's up to you. He then moves on to personal incredulity and offers Bill O'Reilly as an example, but I'm not interested in defending Bill O'Reilly. And in another video later, he actually claims that you can prove a negative, and I'm really looking forward to refuting that video, but it may be a while. In the meantime, this is Refuting Atheists, sounding off.